We're talking in this video about day residue, what it is, why it leads to one of the major mistakes in the field of dream work, and most people don't recognize this huge mistake they're making. And then we're also going to talk about the two ways that it can show up while you sleep and why it's important and you should pay attention to it. I was getting ready for this video and I closed my blinds and I was like, oh no, the sun is shining through. I should really pull the blinds down. And then I thought, no, that's actually very symbolic of day residue. It seeps in to the dream space, and that's our topic. So, hello, synchronicity. It's awesome. I brought some notes because I want to make sure to stay on track for you. So hopefully something in here will be helpful for you. My name is Sweet Georgia Pam. I work at the intersection of dreams, spirituality, and emotional regulation. It's a three-way intersection, and I hope that you'll follow this video and the others that I produce and put out to try to help all of us normalize and integrate the wisdom that comes from the dreaming mind. So let's get started. We're going to talk about what day residue is. So the term, I think, was actually coined by Freud, and it generally refers to the stuff from your dreams that just seems like leftovers from waking life. The best example for me of day residue is recently I was binge watching Silo on Apple TV, and I went to sleep and just proceeded to have flashes of replays of certain scenes in my dreams that night. I didn't wake up with a full dream that I remembered, but I woke up going like, oh my God, all night I was just replaying scenes from Silo. So that is one example of day residue. It might be a conversation that you had that works its way into the dream space, or it might be just a regular, seemingly mundane encounter that simply repeats or shows up in the dream space. That's day residue. It's leftover day content that works its way into the dream space. Pretty straightforward. I'm sure that you're already thinking of some of your own examples of when day residue showed up in the dream space. But the real motivation for me coming and talking to you about this today is that it actually leads to one of the largest mistakes that people make about dreaming, and that is to assume that you haven't been dreaming at all. If I was new to dream work and I woke up with just flashes or glimpses of snippets of the replay of the show I watched last night in my mind, then I would say, oh, I didn't remember any dreams from last night. When in fact, the day residue is proof that you were dreaming. So it's a complete 180-degree shift to ask you to note day residue as dream content. People do this with day residue all the time. And in fact, they use the day residue to help them more quickly dismiss that dreaming happened or that they had a dream recall. Okay, so there's generally two ways that day residue shows up in your dream space. One is it will show up sort of baked into a full dream. This is the waking life connections that simply are part of the makeup of a full dream that you have, that's going to have symbolic elements and strange things that you've never encountered before or people you've never seen before, but it'll also have, the commercial, some character from the commercial that you saw yesterday on TV. So the day residue is just going to be part of what makes up your dreams. That's the less confusing version when it just shows up as part of a dream. That one sort of we're used to working with, okay? So here's an example of how it might show up. Let's say I'm working with a client and they bring this dream to me. Pam, I'm driving down the highway near where I work, and as I'm driving on the road off to my right, I notice and pass by a fruit tree that is as large as an office building. It's this huge fruit tree on my right as I drive by, and the fruit is watermelon, and the watermelon has fallen onto the exit ramp and is rotting on the exit ramp as I drive by. That's the dream, okay? The day residue is, this is the highway I always drive to work. And maybe while the client and I are unpacking this dream, they also happen to mention that earlier this week, they got an invitation to a summer barbecue, and the invitation had watermelons as the theme. That's day residue. The watermelons is part of the day residue, and the highway that is familiar to that person and they drive every day is part of day residue. That's what we're talking about. It's just what are the connective pieces to waking life? But here's what's important about this. The question becomes why that highway? Why that exit? Why, out of everything that you encountered in that invitation, did the watermelon stick out to you? So there's going to be a reason behind the connective pieces that show up. Your dreaming mind does not waste energy. Nature wastes nothing, right? Everything gets put to use. And so the same is true in the dream space. Every element of the dream, including that seemingly unimportant watermelon on that invitation, is going to have some significance for you. The trick is going to be figuring out what it is. I don't want to confuse you, though. It's not that the watermelon is the most important part of that dream. It's not that every piece of day residue is equally significant, but it does mean that the watermelon and that your drive to work have something to offer you or teach you that you're grappling with right now. It does mean that the watermelon triggered something emotional in you that's important, that you could use the dream to look at. The important thing is not that day residue happens. The important thing is to say why that day residue out of everything I encountered yesterday. If this were my silo dream experience, I would be asking, why did those scenes show up and not the other ones? So our normal mistake is to say, I dreamt it because I encountered it. That's why it was there, because that's something from my waking life. And the question becomes, why did my encounter with it cause me to dream about it? You've got to flip the script on that logical thinking mind, your waking mind, that likes things to have order and that likes to quickly dismiss things that you can't efficiently relate to. Like the dismissal is, oh, I dreamt about Silo because I went to sleep right after I watched it. Duh. That's the dismissal. But instead, I can say, why did those particular scenes show up in the dream space when the others didn't? That's the shift. That's how you get deeply into finding the most meaning out of your dream space and putting it to use for your own psychological well-being. I did a radio interview one time, like a call-in show where we took calls, and this lady called in. I've never had this question before or since. She called in and she said, I only dream of a continuation of my work, ever. She was like, I work all day, I come home, I go to sleep, I dream about being at work. I go to work, I come home, I dream about being at work. So her whole dream life, according to her, consisted of just day residue. Nothing different happened, nothing interesting, no other changes in her dreams. I bet if I sat with her in a longer session, we would dig up some shifts between waking life and dream life. We would dig up that there were certain scenes that played out and not others out of her waking life. That would be where my line of inquiry would go in that particular instance. I'd be curious to know if any of the rest of you that are watching this have that same encounter or experience, because I haven't encountered it since then. Okay, so that's one way that it shows up in a full dream as like peppered in content. But the other way that day residue is going to show up is in the other phases of sleep that are not REM sleep, or in the flashes of memories as you're falling asleep or as you're waking up. That sleep stage is called hypnagogia, and it means the semi-lucid or semi-conscious state when you're like half asleep, half awake as you're falling asleep, or as you're waking up, like when you hit snooze, your alarm goes off, you hit snooze, and you're just in that like dream state, but also awake and thinking. That can be when flashes of day residue work their way in most often. And because they're disconnected from a dream, you're going to say, well, I wasn't dreaming, I was just sitting there thinking. You might not realize that that is actual content coming out of the unconscious, resurfacing or regurgitating day residue for some significant or important reason. The other benefit, by the way, my friend, and the thing that I hope helps you going forward, is that now that you know that day residue is a thing, that maybe when you wake up in the middle of the night just straight up in anxiety of listing the things you have to do tomorrow, that might be because an instance of something from yesterday made its way into your sleep state as a flash image, and it actually pulled you up out of the dreaming state or out of the sleeping state because your waking mind was like, oh my God, I forgot a meeting yesterday. And you wake up in a state of anxiety. That state of anxiety might have come from an experience of sleeping and actually dreaming where the day residue came through, but your ego mind grabbed hold and pulled you out of the sleep state. If you've ever woken up with an earworm, one of those songs on loop in your head, it may or may not be a guide, a spiritual guidance message. I love those. But sometimes it's not a guidance message for me. Sometimes it's that while I was cooking dinner yesterday, a commercial was playing, and that song was the background of a commercial. And it might be that that commercial is triggering for me of my own concern about my health. So subconsciously, my mind logged that song as important or significant day residue that I could, that my waking mind didn't notice, but my dreaming mind was like, well, we'll take it on. We'll try to process some of that for you or with you. So day residue can show up in the smallest of ways in the dream space that you don't even notice are happening. But if you understand it now that you've watched this video, it might give you some new insight into, oh, actually, that earworm, um, I wonder where I've heard that before, and I wonder why I woke up thinking about it. I wonder why it worked its way into my sleeping, dreaming mind and gave me something to chew on when I woke up. So it can turn your anxiety into maybe curiosity and wonder and a little bit of open mindedness that you might learn something from the residue that's surfacing and that remains after your day is over. Okay, how'd we do? Do you feel like you know something different that you didn't already know before? I would love to hear about it in the comments. You should definitely like and subscribe. My goal is to continue to put content out. So if this is interesting and the dream space is your wheelhouse, or if you're just learning to become familiar with it, I'd love to hear from you. Do all the things, and I'll see you next time. Sweet dreams.